sometimes a corporate story just isn't well done. Here's some of the basic things you're going to see. I'm going to avoid taking any specific company and saying, this really is a pretty bad corporate story, because who knows, I might get sued in the process. Okay, but there's lots of examples of stuff that are poorly developed. So let's look at some of the reasons. It's the opposite of the reasons that they're successful. But this is kind of a new turf for a lot of us. So let's look at this. I'll avoid naming the guilty. That being said, poorly developed stories, a lot of times, the rag to riches narrative. Probably the most famous one is J.K. Rowling's with Harry Potter. You don't get much of a rag to riches. She's in abject poverty trying to sell the story. Harry Potter was rejected by multiple people, and finally somebody had belief in her, and she's a multi-billionaire right now. Pretty wild rags to riches story, and it's real. Sometimes people sit down and they play the game as, I was really poor once upon a time. Yeah, you're poor living in a 5,000 square foot house with a Maserati in your garage. Yeah, you are poor, and people will get that eventually. People don't want to sit down and be played. Don't do it. Be authentic in everything you say or do. Well, I don't believe in that, and all of a sudden you believe this once upon a time 30 years ago, and you don't believe it now? What's the problem? Did the world change? Well, yeah, my beliefs change. Well, how shallow are you? Okay, so does times change? Yes, they do. So you have this whole aspect of authenticity. People like people that are real and authentic. So that being said, it undermines your credibility. They can sense insincerity and they lose trust in the process. Trust is part of this whole thing about a corporate story. Tell the truth out there, and you can always sit down there and not share everything maybe, but that being said, if you forget about it and somebody brings it up, you may have a problem later on. Sometimes the story is nothing more than a hype to sell the product. To help Honda people, they don't sell the product. They sell their helpfulness, and by the way, we sell these kind of cars. It's really been successful. That being said, if you keep on having this clock showing up because you're selling the tacos, people are already ticked off. Yes, they'll get wound up in the process. Yes, yes, yes. So if you emphasize that product too much, then they're going to be turned off by that as well. So that being said, focus on the product details. It neglects the emotional aspect. I sit down there. My clock has really been with me for a long time. I treasure my clock. Okay, so that really is not going to fly, except for the fact that the dependability of it and everything else, part of your life. Talk about different aspects of it, have the emotional connection, but don't sit down and push. It's nothing short of a sales pitch. And we're so sick of sales all the time. We're barraged on our phone with spam calls. We're barraged on our phone with ridiculous tweets, with ridiculous different postings on Instagram, where our email is flooded with different aspects of it. So people are tired of it. The third example really is the distorted elements that are out there. You sit down and you want to avoid what are they talking about? I've seen commercials on television, and maybe they're not meant for my generation, but if I'm scratching my head saying, what in the world is that about? Frankly, if I got to watch it 4 times to figure out what they're talking about it. As far as I'm concerned, it's not worth my interest because they're ignoring me as a demographic. So that being said, lack of structure, really make certain what you say makes sense across the entire generation spectrum. The fourth type, the narratives only has management's viewpoint and not employees' experiences. Sometimes it's all about me. Yeah, the CEO gets so involved, they think the whole world revolves around them. And by the way, they should have gotten over that in 4th grade when the super ego was better developed. Okay, you have people that are kind of stuck there and they're caught up in this whole narcissistic world of, look at me, look at me. No, it's not about you. It's about the customer and how they relate to your organization. People get turned off by that when you neglect the employees and the other people and the other values in the organization. If you're an employee in that kind of an organization, you just want to sit down there and roll your eyes every time the CEO talks and take a snooze. That being said, the stories are often flawed, especially when you exclude the employees' perspectives. Sometimes the employees are actually some of the smartest people out there. I was part of a thing called the Michigan School Business Officials. I was president of a division, and we did a survey statewide. We hired a company called Plant Moran, and they did a survey as to how we pass a bond issue of all things, or try to get a school millage passed with the voters. We went through, we asked them to do a survey of voters for the people that they trust. They didn't trust the Board of Education people because they're all politicians. They didn't trust the administrators because the administrators, they just sit there and want to get their money for their projects. They didn't trust the teachers, although they trusted teachers more than those administrators because teachers only after more money. The people they trusted the most, the ones they trusted the most were the lowest paying people in the organization. They trusted the bus drivers. Bus drivers are the lowest paid. They're only part-time a lot of times, but they trust them. Why did they trust them? Because they see that person picking up their child on the corner and they feel safe when that person's there. And by the way, what do you think of the millage? We don't even need it over there. Bus drivers are the most critical element. The second most critical element are the custodians. They don't care about the high expenses, salaries, or anything else. They care about the people that they can trust because they have no vested interest in the process. The employees can sit down there and really push your organization and make it successful. The last one, and a poorly developed story, it exaggerates the company's achievements and growth. We serve the whole planet Earth. Well, yeah, and maybe 2 other counties besides the one that you're in. Okay, so that concentration of positivity is unrealistic after the 10,000th time that really, you're that good. So don't overestimate your achievements. Don't make unrealistic claims, and make certain that authenticity is part of the credibility in the process. So some of the lessons learned: authenticity is vital. Emotion and relatability really needs to be prioritized. Have a clear narrative structure. Make certain a rational human person makes sense, not a crazy marketing person who has a scheme and they think they're communicating, but they're not. Employee perspectives add depth and authenticity, and really achievements should be realistic. Really summarize the examples of different corporate stories and their shortcomings. Make certain that you don't fall into the same pitfalls we just talked about here as to what the poorly developed corporate stories can be. Make certain you avoid their shortcomings and the message is clear, it's authentic, and people can relate to it, especially emotionally. Take care.